At Thatcher, the core values are honor, fairness, kindness, truth, and I would add beyond that, integrity. These are values that are core to me, and they're core to my journalism.
The confidence that you get from having been tested and supported and nurtured, I don't even think I realize how much I draw on that every day.
I've come to believe that choice of high school is more important than college. I think the college, it didn't really shape any significant part of me as opposed to Thatcher, which really was a big part of who I am.
So much of what I attribute to this school has been about changing the trajectory of my life and changing the person that I am.
I think everyone who graduates from Thatcher have a hard time, honestly saying that this place didn't change their life. I don't think my story is truly unique.
I'm James Newton Howard, C to P 69. I'm a working composer here in Santa Monica, California. The creative process for me involves a lot of stream of consciousness. I always think about it in terms of if I were standing on the bank of a stream and I'm watching a stream run by and I see big fish floating in the stream, and every now and then there's this fish that goes by and I want to grab that fish. And that's the idea that I'm always looking for. My dad had passed away when I was 10, so it was just my mom, and she was always anxious for me to have a special educational experience. It was so out of our universe coming from Gardena, California, but I think she felt that I did, that it was an opportunity for something really special. One of my Thatcher classmates said he knew some guys that were in our band and they were actually making a record, and did I want to audition for it? I got the job. I learned how to be in a recording studio for a couple of years. And then somebody offered me a movie, which I turned down because I was really terrified. I didn't know how you write a movie, and they kept at it, and I finally said yes. Somehow or another, I got through it, and during the process of getting through it, I felt that I had found what I was supposed to do my whole life. I don't think one can ever expect fear to not exist or self-doubt to not exist, but I think one gets to the point where you accept it as a companion. It's just something that is going to be ever present, and in some cases, it can be a tremendous motivator. I think there's no question that the idea of saying yes to an opportunity, even when you don't feel so secure about it, I learned at Thatcher. One can really not fully understand the impact that that school, that period of your life has until perhaps decades later. I always feel like I'm coming home when I go to Thatcher. You know, my kids, when they were about 8 or 10 or 12 years old, we went up there and went for a horse ride, and they just kind of exploded with interest. They already realize, a year or 3 or 4 years out of school, what a significant, important, and incredible experience that was for them. Thatcher, I think it's the best version that it's ever been right now. The qualities, the honor, kindness, fairness, and truth, those values are perhaps spoken about now or embodied more on a day-to-day level than they were even when I was there, because perhaps the challenges of the world are even more extreme at the moment. I think it's always been about providing extraordinary education, about getting them excited about learning, inspiring them to do the right thing. I think those things never change. One will come out of that school with a better sense of self, such a satisfying feeling of accomplishment. There is nothing else to compare to it. Thatcher means so much to me on a profound level. I feel like I owe that school a part of my life.
My name is Rohini Kalamaki, CETA-P 1991. I'm a foreign correspondent for the New York Times, where I cover the Islamic State. These days, that means ISIS. I was born in Romania, and when I was 5 years old, my mother, grandmother, and I boarded a train to Switzerland. Romania at that point was behind the Iron Curtain. It was a communist country, and my mother essentially fled. I had a label on me. I was a refugee. California is the great equalizer. This was a place where suddenly, although class of course existed, it was not something that was worn on people's sleeves. It was something that wasn't talked about, and that was very freeing for me. I had heard of Thatcher from a little girlfriend I had. I asked my grandparents to drive me up to the admissions office, and I got, this little prospectus, and I spent weeks, writing these essays. I had been at that point in America for 3 years, so my English was not fluent, and my math skills were really lacking. And I remember my mom telling me, if you got in, you're the last kid to get into your class. You're gonna get in by the skin of your teeth if you get in here. And I think that's what happened. This has been my experience throughout my life. I never get in through the front door, ever. Ever. There's not been a single front door that has ever been opened to me. I think it took me late into my 30s until I finally just embraced it. And I said, the back door, that's what I do. I get in through the back door. The New York Times is another example. I began applying in 2003, and I applied 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and it wasn't until 2014. So really, a decade later that the Times finally made me an offer. It was at Thatcher that I started running, long distance running. I'm actually terrible at it. I'm really slow, but running has become a kind of metaphor for me because what I do is, as I'm running, it's hard. And so what I do is in my mind, I break it up into little pieces. I remember having this conversation with myself as I was running up Thatcher Road. And I remember just picking off, a pepper tree, picking off an oak tree, and basically just in my mind, breaking it into small steps. That's how I write. I always get flustered when I have a big project, and so I just say, break it up into little pieces, start with something that's doable. And that's been my endurance mantra, and I think that began at Thatcher. Those values that are Thatcher values are also, to me, very much American values. These are values that are core to me, and they're core to my journalism. I show people that I trust them, and this goes to what Thatcher does, which is that you entrust people with this trust, and then it somehow brings out people's better nature. When you are a journalist and you're interviewing somebody, you inevitably have a lot of power over them. Even without meaning to, you are crafting their image in how you represent their words. And you can very easily skew it. I go into these interviews and I'm always trying to ask myself, what is the fairest way to represent this person? And I do this with normal people as well as with ISIS. We're covering a terror group, so this is a difficult type of coverage. You can't interview these people any which way. I'm constantly trying to find ways to understand them and to try to hear their voice. I've just been schooled by life and realized that if I just keep going, if I just stay in the game, eventually my turn will come. This flame inside me, this idea of finding this passion and then just sticking with it in the many, many times when I wanted to give up. But somehow I stuck with it. And if my life is an example, I think that if you do stick with it, you will eventually get there.
I'm Ali Rossi, CDP 2004. Initially, as a new sophomore, I was very introverted and very much in a shell. I had no idea what I really wanted to do with my life. So I went on this backpacking trip my junior year of Thatcher, and 3 days into it, I had to get choppered out due to high altitude pulmonary edema. And it was a thought process during that moment where I'm waiting for the chopper that I just skated through school with no real passion, no real drive for anything in particular. I felt like I hadn't truly carpe the diem, if you will. And then getting choppered out of there, that was the seed planted. It was this is something I can do. So it wasn't until I was in the chopper with high altitude pulmonary edema that it hit me that I wanted to be a doctor. I grew a bunch junior year and I started talking to everybody and I was pretty stoked to be alive. My grades shot up. I got really into tennis and I went to Cam Shriver and told him that I really want to learn how to ride a horse. And so he gave me a real horse to work with. And then senior year, I met Cam Spalding and he became someone I think of as a big brother.
Any thoughts about where you wanted to go?
He took me on his Muir-Wise trip, backpacking through the Sierra, where you make your own backpack and you carry a stack of books that inspire you and teach you about the wilderness. That was the most influential month of my high school life for sure. I think one of the best things Thatcher does is teaches you how to be really, really excited and really happy with the very simple things in life. After the whole pulmonary edema thing, I was like, okay, I have like a purpose in my life. I'm gonna be a doctor. A year and a half ago, I started a nonprofit, and the mission of the organization is to use the wilderness as the platform for doctors to deliver health interventions for vulnerable youth. I think every child, every youth needs to be exposed to the wilderness because I think that there is an element of the human spirit that medicine can't fix. Wilderness is a huge part of it because wilderness has that ability to heal. I thank Thatcher for introducing me to the wilderness. I think we live in a world with so much noise and so many pieces of technology that your mind always at a state of overdrive. And as soon as you're on a trail, the rest of the world quiets down. For me personally, it's time out in the mountains and it's time out in the wilderness that lets me frame all the stuff that I'm seeing every day. And honestly, if it wasn't for Thatcher, I would never have that outlet. The desire to be a doctor would not have been planted if it wasn't for my experience at Thacher.
Brendan Bechtel, C2P, 1999. This is Thatcher in a room. Old block walls, and you've got old bridles, steer heads for roping, tools to actually do some work, sewing machine to fix your saddle. You have chaps in various stages of assembly. I mean, how cool is this? That's beautiful. I'm the chairman and CEO of Bechtel. Bechtel is the largest engineering and construction contractor in the US and one of the top 10 firms in the world. We've been around for 119 years. We have built 25,000 projects in 160 countries on every continent on Earth. Globally, I lead a team of anywhere between 50 to 150,000 people. We like to do the big projects that are too tough for anybody else to do. That challenge is what really fires us up. Uniquely Thatcher approach to one's career. I spent most of my life since Thatcher moving around every 6 to 18 months on different construction projects around the world, sort of living the life of a wandering minstrel of construction, but working with really inspiring, half-crazy people from all over the world on our job sites, helping deliver big jobs and generally in difficult places. In the morning, I can be out on a job site with 6,000 craftsmen and women and be having an all-hands meeting with a couple hundred pipe fitters and welders, know how to connect with them and show appreciation for their work and their craft. And then in the afternoon, I can be meeting with the head of state. Being able to go back and forth between those two is a life skill that I think Thatcher really developed, and it's no more complicated than just having fostered a curiosity in people and really getting to know them and what they care about. It's also some basic things like once you've shoveled horse manure, you know what hard work is. You know, you're never above anything. Talk about keeping you humble. The appreciation that being around a 1,000-pound animal, a horse who could kick you at any point in time and who may or may not want you sitting on their back and is going to let you know, teaches a respect for how you approach situations maybe that are new or that you don't know. When I was 13 or 14 and I sort of looked at the kids I was growing up with, I was looking for something different from a values perspective, something that built on the values of our family, but that would allow me to have the space to make them my own. Even at 13, 14, that was a really appealing part of Thatcher to me, was this chance to sort of go forge my own identity. And I would never have discovered the things I did about myself. One of the things that I think I've taken away from my Thatcher experience is that, we really consider ourselves a values-based company. And if you look at Bechtel's vision, values, and covenants, you'll see at its core, it's honesty, fairness, kindness, and truth. That core that's unassailable is something that was certainly strengthened during my time at Thatcher. When I think about the density of goodness of my classmates, when I think about 60 of us who have this credo that says you got to keep working until the best you can do is all done, going out into the world and doing whatever it is that we're going to do with our lives, I have a really high degree of confidence. There's this sense of service and duty to go do something productive with that very rare, very unique and privileged experience. A place like Thatcher really prepares you to think about and be thoughtful about how do you actively build a culture? How do you build a sense of community? How do you create a culture that's positive and inclusive, that people want to be a part of it and that people want to contribute? And that's something that allows ordinary people to do pretty extraordinary things when you know you can count on the person to your left and to your right. That's been one of the great takeaways from Thatcher for me.
I'm Ryo Wong, CDP 97. I grew up in San Francisco, modest middle class background, and had never even heard of boarding school. Learned about Thatcher and I was like, horses? Camping? This sounds really interesting. Bear in mind, I'd never gone camping before. I'd barely been on a horse. I maybe did like those pony rides in the park. It's sort of astonishing to think about how little I knew about Thatcher before arriving. I knew about horses, I knew about camping, I knew that you could bring your shotgun and keep it in your dorm room, and that was about it. Like, I packed up and I was ready to go. I think what I brought, and I think what the school really helped to engender me, it was kind of this wide-eyed curiosity and this willingness to just jump in and see what it was about. It seemed both scary and exciting. Distinctly remember my parents in our old station wagon driving through the gates of Thatcher and on this beautiful campus, and I was like, wait, where am I? It sort of felt like a fairyland. Just the moment I got there, I just felt like this is where I belong and this is going to be a great adventure. By coming to Thatcher and being surrounded by intellectually curious people who were engaged in conversations about literature and politics and science and art, it was so exciting. Coming from a public middle school in San Francisco, I just remember the concept of the honor code being such a fundamental shift for me. Like, oh, we can live in this state of trust and like this state of security and this state of really coming together as a community. It so deeply changed the way I viewed the world. What I do today is driven both by a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunities I've been given, as well as a sense of justice about what is right in the world and what people should have access to, and sort of sense of equity and equality that I think all Thatcher students have. One metaphor that really resonates for me is this concept of a ripple effect, which is like I was given an opportunity and it's only right that I ripple out that opportunity to other kids. We are a program for low-income, high-achieving middle school students, and we support them for 10 years to or through college. And so back in the day in San Francisco, I was a breakthrough kid, and then I started working as executive director here in New York 11 years ago. It's been like the greatest privilege of my life to be part of the lives of so many talented young people. I credit Thatcher with so much of how I think about educating people and how I think about creating community. It's about the quality of relationships, and it's about opening of the horizons of what is possible in ways that are not even obvious to me, Thatcher has really impacted the way that I think about kids, that I think about education, and that I think about community. Fatimata is one of the kids that we recruited from one of our partner schools in Brooklyn, and from the moment I met her, she just had this spark about her, this real kind of liveliness and this soulful quality about her.
Fatimata! Yeah, oh my God!
Hi. She was laser focused on Thatcher, so she applied to a couple of other schools, but those schools were all Plan B for her because Thatcher was like the place. Whatever it was about Thatcher, she knew that's where she belonged.
Without Rhea, I don't think I would have been here. I feel like my high school experience would have been completely different from what I ever imagined. I think that she played a very important part in making sure that I go to the best high school.
The older I get, the more I realize that there is magic in the world. I mean, all you have to do is walk on the campus of Thatcher to know that magic exists. It makes me so happy to think about Fatimata living this magical existence at Thatcher. When I work with these kids, it's sort of this idea of stewardship. My mission is not just to create college graduates, but good, nice, kind people who will make the world a better place. I think a lot about the sum total of my life, honor and fairness and kindness and truth, and doing the best work that we can do till the best we can do is all done. And ultimately, if my legacy is the impact that I've had on people's lives, that's a pretty great legacy.
May honor and fairness and kindness and truth be ours till our struggle is through.